series that we have been putting across for you, curating for you for the past several weeks and months. It's the BW Atmanirbhar Bharat mission that had, of course, been taken forth at the helm of affairs, being Anurag Batra. He joins me on the broadcast. He is the editor-in-chief of BW, and so are a number of guests who are joining me on the broadcast. Mr. Girish Evyali, who's the CEO of South Asia AgTech Hub for Innovation. Mr. Rajesh Pathak, Country Manager, India and SAARC, Assyrian Networks. Mr. Divakar Vijay Sarathi, who's the founder and manager partner, DVS Advisors. Mr. Kanish Gupta, who's the director and co-founder at Sukoon Hospital, governed by Fortis Healthcare. Mr. Siddharth Kedia, who's the Group Chief Executive Officer, Norden Gaming, and Dr. Swati Maheshwari, Internal Medicine Specialist. Welcome on the show, everybody, and a special welcome to Anurag Batra as well. Thanks yet again for curating such a beautiful set of panel for us, and on a very special day for you today, wishing you a very happy birthday. And what's in store for us today on your special day?
Thank you, Megha, for embarrassing me on national television. I'm grateful to you. You were giving away my age.
Not at all. I think you're looking younger by the years.
But it's a normal day for me, and I continue to do what I do, and I look forward to my evening 6 to 7 when we get together and do this daily BW Business World Music's Atmanirbhar series. Today we have a special set of guests who are from various sectors of the economy. Let me start with my friend Girish. Girish, agriculture has found a special place in the last 5 months. Food items have become the essential items, and food has continued to see regular demand. And the government has really tried to roll out SOPs for the agriculture economy. It has also done things which benefit agri-tech. Tell us, do you think agriculture will grow and that will help our GDP grow? What are your views, Girish Evyali?
Oh yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Anurag, and wish you a very happy birthday once again. I think if you see during the current pandemic, none of us ever faced any shortage of food. Whenever we went into the retail market, we always had fruits, vegetables, and pulses and grains available. So that speaks volumes about the agricultural supply chain in India. I continue seeing the similar trend to continue. The government recently has made a lot of positive noises on the agricultural sector. Primarily, they have spoken of two things. The first they have spoken of is to reduce and remove the APMC barrier. So they have removed the APMC Act and therefore enabling the farmer to sell anywhere across the country. The second thing which the Modi government has done is that they have a $15 billion stimulus for creation of agri-infra have been to 4 items, which is creating cold stores, creating agri houses, creating modern terminal markets, and creating mega food parks. So while the details of the scheme are yet to be rolled out, we do anticipate that either through the Ministry of Agriculture or through the Ministry of Food Processing or through NABARD, the government will certainly announce more.
And dare I say, everything, Girish, is dependent on implementation. It's a good policy, so we will see how the implementation is. Let me bring in Rajesh Pathak. Rajesh, technology and technology companies and technology enablers have made, when the sun is not shining, so to say, even in this COVID times, technology purchases, technology adoption, and technology investments have gone up. What do you see as the road ahead for Indian business and economy, especially if you had to gauge it from the money being invested by enterprises on technology? How do they see their future?
First of all, thanks, Dr. Anurag, for getting me on this show, and wish you a very happy birthday. If you see from a technology perspective, last 4 to 5 months have been quite challenging for any corporate leader, from any technology leader it's a tough times, and we all have gone through those tough times. But if we talk about from the telecom and IT sector, in spite of this challenge, this has been the most operating sector running in the last 150 and 180 days, and played a quite major role to keep us connected. So whether it's adoption of the digitization which has happened, which is an important aspect. Most of though economics have got a huge setback during the recent the pandemic, and but how the important aspect has emerged out of this pandemic is the contribution of digitization, which can keep the economics running, and the vision which has already been laid by our Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, through a Digital India program. So I see a good future coming out from the adoption of the technology. There is a lot of adoption happening on the cloud front. There are a lot of adoption happening on the IT. And with the coming time, with the next few quarters, this is going to rise up quite considerably. With the few, though it's been a challenging time, I see a quite rise in the coming sectors.
Okay, Mr. Pathak, we'll come back to you. Dr. Maheshwari, primarily this is a healthcare crisis. If the government can solve that fully, I think everything else will get solved. There is currently a very big fear of going to offices, big fear of going to public places like restaurants, malls, hotels. So when do you think a vaccine will come up? You're a doctor, and hence I'm asking that. It's $1 trillion question, literally. And do you see the debate between lives and livelihood continuing for a while? Because we see there is a second wave of corona in UP. You saw the numbers yesterday. What is your prognosis of the healthcare issue, and how do you think it's impacting the business and economy? Dr. Maheshwari. Dr. Maheshwari, can we hear you? For some reason,
Dr. Maheshwari, you'll have to unmute yourself.
And
for us
Megha,
to be able to.
The single-used word, most used words of
Absolutely.
2020 will be not corona, it will be unmute your.
Absolutely,
unmute.
absolutely.
And today, we're hoping that through our discussion, we can unmute the economy.
Yeah,
Dr. Maheshwari.
Yes, Dr. Maheshwari will join us in just a short. Yeah, Dr. Maheshwari will join us just a short while. There seems to be an audio issue with her, but perhaps if Mr. Kanish Gupta could answer that question for us at Sukoon Hospital, Fortis Healthcare, how are things exactly at this point of time? Surge of patients, very, very important to ensure that sanitary issues and other protocols are taken. And obviously, Dr. Batra went ahead and asked this question, when is the vaccine coming forward? That's the, like he said, literally $1 trillion question. And in wake of this vaccine, there has been a sudden spurt of cases that has been witnessed not just in the capital, but other parts of the country as well. How exactly is the medical fraternity taking all this in and ensuring that there is equipment and there are enough doctors and medical staff to take care of the people of the country?
Dr. Batra, thank you so much for having me on your show, and a very happy birthday to you. So just to address the vaccine part, like everyone wants it here as soon as possible, but unfortunately so we need to go through the entire clinical trial cycle. For it to be safe, we need to know what the long-term effects of it would be on our people, and hence I don't expect it to be coming in before October. As far as the healthcare industry is concerned, we at Sukoon have seen a massive rise in psychiatry and psychology. The number of therapy consultations has shot up month over month by over 100%. But for anything else that is non-fatal or non-emergency, the admission rates have certainly dipped down. We're seeing an occupancy of about 20 to 30% in non-fatal industries. To further add to that, it's great that this stimulus package has come on the supply side of things, right? But we need something on the demand end. Like, how do we get, like, for a tech-enabled industry like Mr. Pathak's, you can easily remotely work from home. But for healthcare, we need our essential workers to come to our place of work, and need public transport to be completely enabled for that, even if it is just for essential employees. We're running an infrastructure system that runs 24/7. There are 3 shifts a day. We really need public transport to open up, because no amount of stimulus will help us take care of all of you, to ensure that there's no more fear in the public to go out and use the services, because at the end of the day, when you're creating that supply, you need people to come and access it. There needs to be demand for it as well, and that can only happen if essential employees are able to get to their place of work, especially in healthcare.
Okay, thank you, Kanish, for being so realistic and honest. I agree with you that in some phased way, the public transport, whether it's metro or other forms of public transport, needs to be brought back into action in anticipation that hopefully in October things could go back to normal. At least from September end, we could see Corona receding. And if there is a vaccine, October seems very close. I mean, if you said to me 5.5 months back that the vaccine will come in October, it would seem very far off. It's 2 months off and 5 months have gone in a jiffy. Let me get Siddharth in. Siddharth, the economic stimulus was given almost 3.5 months back. Have you seen fellow entrepreneurs around you getting the economic stimulus and benefiting from it? Have you heard of people saying that, you know, I've got it and it has helped me? And where do you see the business and economy going? Siddharth Kedia.
Thanks, Anurag, for having me on the show, and happy birthday once again. I think the reaction on the economic stimulus has been fairly mixed. While from some people one is hearing, especially down the chain at the bottom of the pyramid, that some of that economic stimulus has worked. For others, it hasn't been as much as the government had promised, but I'm sure it's a work in progress. It's a big country we are talking about, and some of these things take time in distribution. You know, as far as the economy is concerned, there are certain sectors which have definitely got hampered by that. But then there are certain others which have benefited immensely. So if you just look at, you know, video consumption on OTT platforms, gaming, or esports as platforms, specifically the industries that I represent, there has been a massive boost, you know, to those industries. And there have been multiple changes. So one, from the economic side, there has been boom. The industry had witnessed, let's say, 40% growth last year. It has already seen 50 to 60% growth at an industry level in the last 4 months.
And all organic. And all organic.
And all organic, right? Two, I think there is a socio-cultural change happening. So on one side, WHO, which used to deride gaming in general, ran this campaign globally called Play Apart Together, which was a very successful campaign because gaming for them is now helping people maintain sanity. And the other big change that we are seeing in the Indian context is that families are bonding over games. So while parents would tell children, don't play, don't do something meaningful in life, go meet people outside, go play outside, they are now using games to connect with their children, connect as families. So whether you see Ludo King, whether you see Carrom Pool, I mean, these have become massive games and entire families are playing these games. I mean, I'm not even going to the PUBG mobiles of the world where, you know, parents are bonding with their children and actually playing with them. But the big games like Ludo and Carrom, which are more casual games, have become massive family connectors, not just within the same household, but connecting over, you know, playing online and connecting with their extended families across the spectrum. And that's very promising. So while this has been a setback, and you know, all of us will take some time to recover from that, I think these are good signs that some of the industries are going to lead the change going forward and revival of the economy.
Thank you so much. You know, screen time has become another issue. We all are spending more time on the screen, whether it's in a webinar or on a phone. It has become boundaryless work, extended working hours. You know, our children are spending more time on devices, and, you know, I don't know whether it's good to encourage them or discourage them. I'm sure they'll find their own balance on that. Diwakar, what is your view on where is the business and economy headed? And, you know, startups have seen a decline in revenues. Some of them not being able to raise money. So do you see post-August, when the moratorium goes away, some of the startups folding up, shutting down? Is it a very bleak scenario for startup founders and startups? Diwakar?
Yes, thanks, Anurag, and again, wishing you a wonderful birthday. Now, coming from the financial services and the legal and the tax and legal industry, what we are seeing now is, of course, the equity funding has not been as bullish as before. But for startups, any which ways, the support from the financial services business, be it the lending part of it, was never very bullish. Invariably, they had to focus on going for Series A, B, and C rounds of equity. And thanks to the current issue, what we are having with China, we are seeing China-centric funds going cold on their ventures in India and going slow on writing larger checks. So that's definitely a cause for concern for ventures which are burning cash. But if we were to look at the green shoots here, I mean, the startup fund which the government of India is setting up, from whatever I'm given to understand, is actively looking at proposals at this point in time. But given the bureaucratic hurdles, it is likely to take some more time. The other industry which is really pushing for some Atmanirbhar reforms at this point is the fund management space. So, Anurag, what is really interesting is, though our FDI scenario is not as bad, we are moving on fairly smooth. Nearly 55 to 60% of our FDI still comes from Singapore, Mauritius, and Netherlands. Now, when the government of India has set up our own GIFT City, which is India's answer to the global offshore space, and that's been in operation since 2015, it's extremely unfortunate that just one foreign fund is so far set up its shop there. And
by the way, Divakar, we did a full show on GIFT City.
Seriously.
Everybody involved with the GIFT City on that. And I fully agree with you, because if that pass-through of money happens with huge geopolitical element, Hong Kong possibly losing some of its share,
exactly,
it can mean a whole new world for the Indian economy. So
true.
I'm totally in sync when you talk of GIFT City.
So there are quite a good number of areas which we can look at in the financial services space, which are currently being logjammed primarily because of regulatory constraints. So if the government's real vision on Atmanirbhar needs to pan out, if those bottlenecks could be removed, I mean, I can keep going on and on in this space. As you rightly said, you need an entire show on GIFT City. That's just one aspect of it. So to come back to your question, startups currently, yes, are in a phase of concern. Those the established ones are getting larger. You would see institutions like Byju's getting rounds of funding literally every fortnight, an offer being made. We saw the case with Reliance Jio as well. But the smaller ones, or those who are just finding their feet, would find it difficult in the next few months to raise capital.
Absolutely. In fact, yes, that is a cause of concern for the startups. And also in wake of the recent report that has come in today, that Alibaba has decided to hold on to its operations and funding that it used to go about giving to a number of startups across the country, that is put on hold. So while there are certain positives to take with the Chinese investments, Chinese firms taking a backtrack and the bans that have happened, there could be certain negatives that also need to be taken forth. Rajesh, coming over here, we talk about circulation of money, recovery of the economy, and like the RBI governor just went about saying yesterday that it is going to be, this is the first time ever in the history of the Indian economy that there has been a contraction of the entire economy. The GDP has in fact going to be contracted in the coming months as well. How exactly do we go about allowing a proper, healthier circulation of funds into the market now?
Yeah. So if I see, most of the global economics have got the setback and during this time, and however I feel that the economic levelers, India will strongly need revised and relaxed policy levers in various sectors to scale back the economy. And our Honorable Prime Minister has given a very large call towards a self-reliant India, which is strongly spirited vision he has created. However, we need a strong policy enablers which contribute to what a global supply chain disruptions are there. Are the global companies which strongly committed to create a win-win situation for India and the business ecosystem. And I earlier also said that, however, the important aspect, if you see an example of any country where we all are facing the challenges, like Singapore, and they are all on the governance because of the digitization. Today, even it's a small country, it's a country by small size, but the governance model has purely on a digitization. So I think the contribution can it make the economy running, and the vision has already laid on this. So I think the future is surely digital, and we must embrace this change strongly and weave into our common thread of the India economy as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, we could also have Dr. Swati Maheshwari on the broadcast with us now that the audio lines are perfectly fine. Swati, your first comments on the current situation, the number of cases are rising. How exactly is the medical fraternity going ahead and taking a look at that? Obviously, vaccine, Lord Dr. Anurag Batra had been posing this question to you as well, initially as well, was when is the vaccine going to come is going to be a big impact on the industry, not just domestically in India, but globally as well. But again, this question is going to be, and you must be asked this question a million times now, and you must have gotten tired of answering that as well. But nonetheless, that's the question. When's the vaccine coming? And how do you go ahead and cope with the current situation that the country finds itself in, with the cases now increasing by the numbers?
Dr. Maheshwari?
All right, so you just have to unmute yourself. I'll do that for you. Okay, yes.
Thank you for having me here, and wish you a very happy birthday, Anurag. So I think, yes, vaccine is the question, the million-dollar question that we are seeking right now, and the market is driven by sentiment. And I think once the vaccine is out or something like that is seeable, that we see that's there in the future, then probably I think the sentiments of the markets would also change. But looking at the current scenario, I think by the end of the year, we should be hearing some good news on vaccine, whether it is indigenous or it's a foreign vaccine, because a lot of going on in India as well. And some of the vaccines have advanced to stage 3, human trials, and therefore we are expecting good results. And whatever feelers have come till now from phase 1 and phase 2 have been good results. And so we are very optimistic as of now, but yes, there have been news of reinfection coming in really recently. I think we had 2 cases here in India, another case in Hong Kong, then Belgium and Netherlands as well have reported reinfection cases, and this has sparked a new controversy as well. And there's been questions now as to how effective would be the vaccine and how many strains are there. Are the vaccines able to kind of ward off all the strains, or would it be effective only for one strain, or whether the vaccine would be 100% effective, or there would be a compromise on the efficiency of the vaccine, it would be effective say 70 to 80%. So there are a lot of questions right now which are lurking around, and we, despite being 10 months old with this virus, our information is really piling up every day. We are still not sure as to how this virus behaves, and every day it throws up new surprises. So as of now, I would say we need to get along with what we have, and whatever resources we have, we need to still be confident that we would have a vaccine which would be able to at least give us some partial protection, at least, if not complete. And I, by the end of this year and early next year, because not just the declaration of the vaccine or announcement of the vaccine, the important part is how this vaccine is going to reach to each and everyone across the nook and corners of the country. So already the government has set up committees to look into this as to how the distribution would happen for the vaccines. But I think by early quarter of the next year, I think we should look at these vaccines being able to deliver door to door, or maybe at the PHCs from where the people can get themselves vaccinated. So the sentiment is high regarding the vaccines, but there are new questions that are popping up, and we need to look at those as well. So I think let's stay positive, at least.
And Dr. Maheshwari, I want to come. You come from the healthcare sector. Nobody is talking about the loss to the healthcare sector. As per the last FICCI report, the organized healthcare sector lost $2.5 billion. If you take the neighborhood clinics, because people are afraid to go to a doctor. Doctor is also afraid to see a patient. What is the loss to this? Is it more like $3 billion? You know, the individual health practitioner, the neighborhood clinics who survive on the patronage of the, you know, neighborhood patients, they've seen a drop in their patients to 100%, 90%, 85%, depending on whether they're a GP or whether they are, a specialist in some area. So how do we help them if this continues for another 2 months, 3 months? I hope not. But what will happen to these, neighborhood clinics?
Yes, you're very right in saying that, and it's a double-edged sword, not just for the patients, I would say, but for the doctors and the medical fraternity as well, because yes, you very rightly pointed out that patients are very scared of stepping into doctors' places and all and everything. And we have seen this, that people are seeking right now consultations only for COVID-related problems, and most of these non-COVID problems have taken a back seat, and people are very skeptical of going to doctors, and a lot of times that has had a very bad fallout as well. There have been a lot of casualties because of this as well. People have succumbed to their diseases and all just because they were scared of going to a doctor, or they thought that they could buy more time, and unfortunately they didn't have more time at that time. So I think, yes, the only thing I think the saving grace here is that government realizes very early, I would say, and by 25th March, telemedicine was given a boost. You know that telemedicine was something which was not very popular here in India.
We're a touch and feel society. We like to visit the bank, especially our parents like to visit the bank. They like to go and meet the doctor. And in case of doctors, yes, I think there is a certain comfort that comes from the doctor talking to you, holding your hand, looking at your pulse, physically examining you if you have a chest infection, looking. So there is a certain comfort and healing that is associated with that process,
I totally agree with what you're saying, but we are in unprecedented times, and nobody had thought that we'd be facing such kind of a pandemic where we'll be having such problems. But as of now, I think telemedicine is one such portal, and I would tell you, I myself do a lot of telemedicine now, and a lot of my colleagues are doing a lot of telemedicine as of now. There are a lot of ailments which we do realize that we can solve, on these video calls and all the different tools that we have now, WhatsApp calls and Zoom calls and all these different options that are there. So we can solve a lot of problems, but you rightly said, if there is a grave problem, if somebody is in serious problem or something, then there's no other way than to step into a hospital, and even a doctor sitting at the periphery won't be able to help you, or somebody sitting at a video call won't be able to help you. But there are lots and lots of issues which we have been able to resolve through the video calls as well, I would say. And I think we are finding this as a new normal for the doctors and even for the patients.
I don't call it a new normal, I call it new abnormal.
My question to you, Siddharth Kedia, you talked about this. This is one particular sector that has obviously witnessed a boom, and an organic boom at that. It is very natural for those who are sitting at home at this point of time, not going to work, not going to school, are going to be utilizing their resources and time into gaming platforms, OTT, and online sports platforms are ones that are actually doing a lot of good business. What's the way forward from here? Like we said, this is a new normal that is going to be set, and how exactly are companies like yours going to encourage and ensure that your viewership does not decrease perhaps after the vaccine comes out and normal recourse of the route of the daily lives is restored?
Sure, I think, so the company that I'm in, we do esports, and our raison d'etre is the broadcast and the number of people who watch the streams that we put together.
Yes.
I think one of the things which a lot of people used to question before COVID, which has been established without any trace of doubt, is that for the youth of the country today, it's active entertainment which they prefer over passive entertainment. And when they are engaging with esports, there is a lot of interaction which happens with those streams, with the community, with the fraternity. They are constantly talking to each other. They are engaged with the game. They are engaged with each other. And while, it's a little foolish to expect that the entire surge which has happened, just to give you some numbers, we have, for some of our prime properties, we have seen a 300% growth in viewership. On the platforms in India, after cricket, we are the most watched sporting event in the country of India.
Wow, that says
is
something.
that sustainable? Well, maybe 100% of that is not sustainable, but we still believe about 70% of that surge which has happened in the last 4 months is definitely sustainable. And I often say that, esports has finally come of age in the country of India because the efficacy of esports is established. It is established with the youth of the country. And it varies as to whether you're talking of India or you're talking of Bharat and which game you're talking about. But the youth of the country is increasingly more interested in esports, and decreasingly interested in the regular traditional sports which are happening. And because there is engagement, because that's what they are doing. When they are in schools, they are in colleges, they are sitting on PCs, they are sitting on mobiles, they are playing games with each other. They are not necessarily out in the field playing cricket and football. And of course, like I said, it varies from city to city, from economic strata to economic strata.
Right.
But I think that's the future. So what we are doing essentially is we are constantly looking at putting up larger events. We are looking bringing global events to India to capitalize on this increased fervor which is happening around esports. We are putting out a lot of our events. We have stepped on the pedal on that, and we see that. So from a legitimacy and advocacy standpoint, what we would have achieved in the next 3 years, we've achieved in the last 4 months. And our business will see a lag effect in terms of the revenue contribution, but we are already seeing green shoots of that, where we believe this is a sustainable model, and we'll grow from strength to strength here on.
Okay, all right. So that makes complete sense. And but also let's also talk about when your active sports, when cricket starts come about. Playing when football, we already have a summit that is going to be happening, a BRICS summit that is going to be happening, and the Khelo Bharat, and India is the one that has gone ahead and announced the fact that it is going to be holding that entire sports summit in 2021 in India, in the heart of our country. So that is also obviously going to be in effect sort of diverge your audiences. But then again, you talk about students, you talk about young people, you talk about then again people who are interested in sports, maybe cricket and things like that, and so on and so forth. But Kanish, coming back to you, let's discuss this further ahead when it comes to hospitals, and like Dr. Batra mentioned about the fact that yes, there has been a decrease when it comes to the revenues of the hospitals. Obviously, people are scared. There has been this paranoia amongst people for going to the hospitals, barring for the time when coronavirus cases are to be detected, and then the person has to be mandatorily being admitted to the hospital. And several state governments have also been advocating that you do not need to be staying in hospitals and do not need to be going to the clinics, and teleservices are the way to go forward to interact with your doctors. Do you think this is a trend that is sustainable, or do you think it is at the end of the day the panacea, the sort of placebo effect that a doctor has on a patient when the patient traditionally goes ahead and visits the doctor, and the doctor then diagnoses his disease and gives him prescriptions?
So what Dr. Batra said is absolutely true, right? We're a touch and feel economy. We like to go to the bank. We like to go meet our doctors. But what the e-commerce industry has also shown, right? Like when push comes to shove, Indians adapt. So when they realized that, yes, they couldn't go see a doctor, telemedicine was the way to move forward. We saw a great increase, a great surge in psychiatry and psychology appointments at Sukoon, right? Has that surge sustained? For psychiatry, no. For psychology, yes. So it would be the same for healthcare. For some verticals and for some disciplines, the surge will sustain. Where people have moved to the telemedicine model and they're sticking by it, where it reduces their drive to come to the hospital. It reduces their operational time in the entire consult. Payment is made online. The doctor's there. We have end-to-end encrypted systems for them to be able to communicate. But for some verticals such as psychiatry or anything else where you need to physically examine the patient, this is not going to be able to sustain. To give you an example from our data set, so for the month of April and May, we saw a surge in online appointments for psychiatry. But then after that, it slowly decreased because people thought the virus is going to go away. When it goes away, they will come and show to the doctor. So they decided to wait it out instead of wasting their money on an online appointment. But for therapy, the people that weren't able to be converting to an online appointment, after sitting for a couple of online appointments, realized that this is as convenient. Because if all you have to do is communicate to your therapist or speak to your counselor, or speak to your psychologist, this can very well be done over a video call. You don't have to make the entire effort of going to the facility. That being said, we heavily do need to invest in the infrastructure of telepharmacy. If we do allow telemedicine, there needs to be easier regulations for us to get our medicines across to the patients. That's the only way that we'll be able to sustain the search in telepsychiatry. Because if I'm not able to get Schedule A or Schedule B medication to our patients, how do I expect them to keep sticking to online appointments? They would physically want to come to the facility. Has that affected my inpatient business? It has severely affected my inpatient business, but there are different ways to handle that. I have a very strong feeling that for at least psychology it will sustain, but for psychiatry it won't. And the same will hold true for other verticals of healthcare, you know.
Okay.
And Ganesh, for the first month, 5 months, I would say, for the first time in our being, you know, health issues are synonymous with mental issue. We're not talking of mental issues as if it was a taboo. We're talking it's a regular health issue. Though we have a long way to go, there is also an issue of number of people who are practicing mental well-being versus the number of, you know, people seeking their advice. So I think we need to address that as we go forward. I want to bring in Diwakar again into the conversation. Diwakar, you heard Dr. Maheshwari, you heard Ganesh. Now, at the end, it's a healthcare issue which is leading to everything else. You know, it's become an economic issue, it's become a business issue. The government has given food to everyone, hence it has kept it away from becoming a social issue where there's social unrest and so on and so forth. Now, tell us, when do you see the business and economy coming back? You understand money, you understand circulation. When do you see demand coming back? IPL is around the corner, Diwali is around the corner. So temporarily we know we will have a surge, but will the surge stay for another 6 months, 10 months, 12 months for us to really have a seamless recovery, so to say?
Yeah, thanks Dr. Batra. Now, in terms of getting the economy back on track, we need to look at it from a sectoral perspective. If you look at labor-intensive sectors, let's say like automobile, real estate. Like today we had the Maharashtra government reducing the stamp duty by 2%.
Yes.
Instantly you saw the real estate.
I don't think 2% stamp duty got reduced in 20 years, 30 years.
Exactly.
You understand the kind of pressure. I mean, we all saw the meme said, you know, liquor has saved the government, right?
True.
I mean, liquor revenues have really let the government function. So real estate, liquor, these are really drivers of the tax that the government gets. So you're not, you know, you're on the right direction when you're thinking what you're thinking. Go ahead.
Yes, but I mean, I come from Tamil Nadu where liquor is the largest contributor to our state's exchequer, and it's state-owned in terms of circulation as well. So coming
I want to tell you, I had 2 roommates in the business school. Girish is my batchmate from the business school. He was a general sec. I lost an election to him by 2 votes, but he's a very close friend of mine. And I had in first year, my roommate was a South Indian. He was from Chennai. I took him as a roommate because he worked 6 years. But he never used to drink. But my second year, my roommate was Balakrishna Keswan, who was a very close friend of mine, who was a social drinker. But, you know, normally, if you say from Punjab, you know, you will joke about alcohol. You'll never joke about alcohol with a Tambram or somebody from Chennai. So these are the perceptions we have. I'm just trying to tell you.
True. I mean, but economics speaks with data, right? So as far as data is concerned, it's completely the other way around. For the state government of Tamil Nadu, liquor is our bread and butter. And they've actually opened it up early this month in the capital city. So coming back to your question, Dr. Batra. So for the economy to start seeing, I mean, money circulation has to flow. And currently that's at an all-time low at this point in time. Credit offtake is not taken off. Even though the government of India has given a 3 lakh crore of central government guaranteed loans, only a half of it has been sanctioned and only 1/3 of it has actually been disbursed as on date. So that's a serious concern. And many instances what we are seeing, even though the banks intend to sanction, there are these lockdown and sudden impact. If there is one COVID issue, the entire building is shut for a week until the fumigation happens. Now these are putting real ambiguities in terms of when things can actually get on track. Again, if you see the GST rates, I mean, 2-wheelers is at 28%, 5-star hotels is at 28 or 18%. If we want these sectors to actually revive and move on from where we are at this point, affirmative action in this regard would definitely act as a stimulus. But in terms of time frame, nothing less than 3 to 6 months before we can actually start seeing some action on the ground. The positive aspect what we see is we work with a lot of banks. Banks have started to lend. They're actually aggressively lending at this point in time to ensure that the NPA numbers don't look exaggerated before Q2 results. So they are building up their books at this point. That's definitely a good sign. But businesses are significantly struggling for working capital. So if the government can come on, or if the government can push institutions for bill discounting, I think that would be a great positive for them to move on. Because ultimately, if you see what the government has given us is a 20% guaranteed credit limit. But we have already lost 5 months, which effectively means you need 40% of your working capital for the year is already stuck. It's lost, but your expenditure is still run. It's still there. So these businesses require anywhere between 40 to 50% of their existing limits as working capital support. We are a poor nation. We can't expect the government to do everything for us. But if by some means where the government can push the liability of the borrowers, like what we have currently seen, the central government guaranteed loans, if they can look at guaranteeing the bill discount, the receivables from these institutions for MSMEs, I think that would be a great initiative to kickstarting the economy. And once we start putting money at the lowest levels of the society, I think things would start falling in place. But again, coming back, nothing less than 3 to 6 months from where we are.
And Diwakar, dare I say, there is a direct correlation between jobs, savings, and demand in the economy, in every economy. And jobs have been hit, so there are savings, but people are saving for the rainy day because they are dealing with uncertainty. So the employees are saving for a rainy day. So that's also not helping demand come back. Let me go back to Dr. Maheshwari. Dr. Maheshwari, in your own practice as a doctor, what have you done as a pivot? You mentioned telemedicine, but what have you done as a pivot that has helped you give your service? Being a healthcare professional is a service, and after COVID, we know that it is the highest level of service. What have you done to keep your livelihood going? When I ask you as a representative of thousands and thousands of doctors who are in the same position as you.
I think most of the people are, kind of adhering on to the technology as of now, because that is the way forward that we see as of now. But yes, being a corona warrior, I would say most of the doctors are there at the front line as well. Not everybody is sitting at home and doing telemedicine for that matter. So most of the doctors are engaged as of now in most of the hospitals and different medical facilities as of now. But then yes, the other doctors, I would say now, though with Unlock 3 and Unlock 4, I think a lot of patients have started stepping in as well. It's not that they are still sitting at home and waiting or only for telemedicine, I would say. People are now getting out and coming to doctors as well. So trickling has started happening. If you go to different clinics and even at the Mohalla clinics, or if you go to clinics around and all and everywhere, now you would still find patients coming in because their patience is also run out. And how long can you hold on? And if you are if you're suffering from certain disease, then how long will you be able to stay at home?
I'm saying, how have you sustained your own livelihood?
Yes.
I'm not talking so much about you as a person, but about your fraternity. Is there a loss, or have they been able to come up with alternate sources of revenue?
See, there is definitely a loss, and only thing as of now we can cling on to is telemedicine only. There's no other way. Other is physical patient, obviously, and we did had some patients who had serious problems who couldn't wait at home and they had no other option but to step out to a doctor. But otherwise speaking, a doctor doesn't have any other revenue platforms for that matter apart from going and consulting a patient. What else can a doctor, because he's not into manufacturing, he's not into production, he's not into any other kind of services that he can provide. So for them, they are at a walking at a very tight rope, I would say, as of now, because yes, the other option only is telemedicine as of now. And yes, we are seeing patients who are coming to us as well. And somewhere or the other, I think corona epidemic has made us realize that health is one sector where the government needs to put in more and more of money. And 1 rupee that you put into health sector brings in a social value of 9 times. So, stitch in time saves 9, I would say. So if the government now, and I'm really looking forward to the 15th Finance Commission as well, if they would be able to stimulate the state governments to spend more on health, because looking at the 2017 National Health Policy, you've seen it was supposed to be 8% expenditure by the state governments by March 2020, and they're not even doing it.
You're at 2.5. 3, that's the
Exactly. And looking at the GDP also, we know that we are just spending mere 1.28%, though our aim is to spend 2.5%. So somewhere or the other, allocation into the Ayushman Bharat schemes, into the NHM is very much required now. Even if you look at Ayushman Bharat, it has been the second largest employment generation after Indian Railways. So not just that it is catering to the health of the people, it is an employment generation factor as well. So health sector could be a very huge sector where a lot of employment generation can happen as well. And through Ayushman Bharat, we have already catered to 1 crore population. So somewhere or the other, if we are able to put in more into Ayushman Bharat, into NHM, and then look at the 73rd and the 74th, I think the Constitution Amendment Act that was there, where we made the Panchayati Raj institutions more responsible. But if you look at...
And it's all interconnected. We now know it's all interconnected. I'll come back to you, Akhilesh. Let me bring in Girish Shavalli. Girish, agriculture. We have services, we have manufacturing, we have agriculture. Now, agriculture, we can really make a leap. If we were to talk again in 12 months, 18 months, what would you have seen us accomplishing? You know, what is your wish list for the agriculture sector for the next 12 to 18 months? Girish Shavalli?
Sure. So, first of all, agriculture, while as we speak of it as a one word, agri is a very vast area. It covers seeds, agrochemicals, fertilizers, warehousing, cold store, processed foods, supply chain, aqua, dairy, feed. So it's a very vast sector, so to speak. Each of them has been differently impacted. However, having said that, I must also say that it has been one of the most least impacted sectors of the current pandemic. The ones that have been most impacted within the agri sphere has been to some extent tractors, the aqua industry, the feed sector, as well as the farm implement sector. Seeds, pesticides, fertilizers, processed foods, supply chain, these have also been impacted, but they have not been impacted so severely. Having said that, the agri sector also has a combination, like all other sectors, a combination of large-sized enterprises and small-sized enterprises and medium-sized enterprises. Large-scale enterprises, typically because of the cash flow that they have, the standing that they have in the market, their brand recognition, brand recall, have done quite well. The smaller enterprises are the ones that have been impacted, and they have been impacted because of payouts of salaries, payouts of interest incomes, and stuff like that. Now, in my view, there are two things which the government must do to ensure that the economy gets revived, and that too with a larger focus on the agri sector, because it is the largest employer in the country, so to speak. One, it must address the farmers. Second, it must address the agri-business companies. Now, when we speak of addressing the farmers, it must first of all ensure that the minimum support price guarantee that it has and that the government executes and implements for rice and wheat is extended to more crops. Because you will soon have the Kharif season coming in, which will kick in from, let us say, September, October onwards, when you will have rice and soya bean crop coming out. So the government needs to ensure that there is more and adequate mechanism to buy these crops. The government must also step in to buy other agri commodities, especially the perishables, the fruits and vegetables. Because the other fact which we have seen is that during the Rabi season, when there was a reasonably good surplus and output, the prices came down. And whenever the prices come down, the farmers get impacted, their incomes get impacted. When a farmer's income gets impacted, the rural economy gets impacted. So that is the first thing that the government needs to take care of, that there is a good MSP which is given a minimum support price guarantee. The second thing which the government must need to do is it needs to revitalize the Food and Civil Services Department in terms of procurement. It also needs to revitalize the Central Warehousing Corporation as well as the State Warehousing Corporation to ensure that there is a robust infrastructure on ground to ensure that procurement of all these agri commodities happens and that the farmer is benefited with a higher income. It is only then that we can expect the farmer to have more income, more disposable income, and therefore that will be the prime catalyst for reviving the agricultural growth as well as the rural demand in the economy.
And you know, hopefully with what you're saying, the farm to fork, you know, will come alive. And you know, the monsoons have been good, Girish. So yes. How does that impact the economy? For our viewers, give us a sense.
Sure. So two things. One, every crop is a function of agronomic fitment. It's a function of soil, rainfall, temperature, sunlight, and stuff like that. So good monsoon is the prime driver for ensuring that the crop and the germination of the seeds, that is robust. So two things happen with a good monsoon. One, your yield does not get impacted. Second, the pest attacks get reduced. And that is what a good monsoon does. So, and as it is from whatever articles one has read, the area under cropping has gone up for this particular Kharif season. There are reports which say that it has gone up by 44%. I don't think that there is so much of land with a massive base that we have currently for it to grow to that extent, but surely there has been an increase in the sown area, and therefore we will expect and we will definitely have a higher output this season. However, having said that, one of the pitfalls of a higher supply is that the demand tends to come down and the prices tend. Yes, and therefore I'm saying again that the government needs to step in with a very robust minimum support price guarantee.
And we need storage, because a lot of our produce rots even before. So we are close in the end, we are near the end. So let me ask you I want a Twitter-like short answer, yes, no, maybe, a specific answer. Indian economy, do you see it reviving within 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? So
18 months.
18 months, Siddharth Kedia?
12 months.
Okay, Dr. Swati Maheshwari?
Yeah, 8 months, I think, yes.
Kanish?
18 months.
18 months. Divakar?
6 months.
Okay, so we have a consensus that it will be more than 6 months. If I just took the average, Megha, what's your view on the economy? When do you think it will revive?
Well, I think I'll have to go with the consensus. It will take perhaps more than 6 months, but there has been a varied spectrum from 6 months, within 6 months being very, very optimistic to about 18 months, perhaps being a little more realistic of the state of affairs that are in the country at this point of time. Unfortunately, I'm running short of time, but very interesting set of guests over here, Dr. Batra, like always, giving us a view of every single market, every single sub-segment of the economy, be it the aggregate business, be it the technology business, the e-commerce, the doctors are over here. So this completely encompasses, and obviously talking about the financial services, without which they are the backbone of every single segment of the market in the economy, in the domestic economy and outside as well. I thank all my guests, Dr. Anurag Batra as well, for joining us on this special broadcast.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.